When Texas hired Charlie Strong in 2014, it felt like the program was getting serious again. Mac Brown's last few years had been rocky, but the Longhorns were still pulling top recruits and playing in big games. Strong was hot off a 37-15 run at Louisville and a Sugar Bowl beatdown in Florida. Texas thought they were getting a no-nonsense winner. Instead, they got a cultural cleanse gone wrong. Strong came in preaching toughness and discipline. Within months, he kicked more than 15 players off the team, including a bunch of upperclassmen. It was a message, I'm in charge now. But without results to back it up, it just looked like chaos. He inherited a team that went 8-5 under Mac, with plenty of talent still in the locker room. But in 3 seasons, Strong never won more than 6 games. His offenses sputtered, his defenses got steamrolled, and the losses piled up to BYU, Iowa State, and the ultimate rock bottom, Kansas. Yep, Texas lost to a 1-9 Kansas team in 2016. That's when the Boosters started packing his bags. Recruiting under Strong wasn't awful, but his QB evaluations were. Tyrone Swoops, Jared Hurd, great athletes, not great quarterbacks. By the time Shane Buechele showed promise, Strong was already toast. Fans were used to 10-win seasons and BCS games. Under Strong, they got a team with no identity, no swagger, and no clue how to win close games. He didn't just struggle, he looked overmatched in every way. Even worse, he made Texas boring. To his credit, Strong handled the heat with class, but his tear it down to build it back up plan never got to the second part. The teardown was real. The rebuild never came. 3 years, 16 wins, and one unforgettable loss to Kansas later, Charlie Strong was out, and Texas is just now getting out of the hole they were stuck in. When Maryland hired Randy Edsall in 2011, they were coming off a 9-win season under Ralph Friedgen. The Terps weren't a powerhouse, but they had momentum. Then Edsall showed up and detonated everything. Day 1, he benched starters, tightened rules, and made it clear he wasn't Friedgen. Result? Half the locker room hit the transfer portal before it was even called that. Maryland lost 24 players in year 1. The on-field product? Worse. Way worse. He went 2-10 that first season, including losses to Temple and Florida State by a combined 76 points. It didn't get much better. Over 5 seasons, Edsall went 22-34 and never finished above 500 in the Big Ten or ACC. He preached discipline and structure, but all he delivered was bad offense and empty seats. Maryland was boring, sloppy, and irrelevant. Recruiting? A mess. He couldn't lock down the DMV area, even as top local talent went to Penn State, Ohio State, and Clemson. Edsall was finally fired 6 games into the 2015 season. He later attempted a coaching return at his former school, UConn, in 2017. But even there, the struggles continued. He ultimately finished his second stint at UConn with a dismal 6-32 record, getting fired again in 2021. Edsall didn't just lose games for Maryland. He effectively flushed a decent program down the drain. Maryland's been playing catch-up ever since. If you're enjoying this kind of content, help me out and hit that like button. Drop a comment with the worst coaching hire your team ever made. And subscribe so I can keep diving into these beautiful disasters. Appreciate the support. Gary Anderson had just won 19 games in 2 years at Wisconsin. Then he shocked everyone by leaving for Oregon State in 2015. People assumed there had to be a master plan. There wasn't. Anderson took over for longtime coach Mike Riley, who left him a scrappy 5-7 team with a pipeline of solid talent. Anderson tossed all of it. Changed the offense, changed the culture, changed the quarterback. Result? Disaster. In 3 seasons, Anderson went 7-23. He never won more than 4 games in a season and went just 3-18 in Pac-12 play. The Beavers looked lost. Even worse, they looked soft. Then came the strangest part. In 2017, mid-season, Anderson just quit. Walked away. Left millions in buyout money on the table. Said he wasn't getting it done and bailed. No coach in modern college football has ever quit like that. Especially not with $12 million still on the table. Some called it honorable. Most saw it for what it was. Total surrender. Oregon State had to rebuild from scratch again. Anderson didn't just fail. He set the program back half a decade before Jonathan Smith finally cleaned up the mess. Chad Morris was hired by Arkansas in 2018 to bring his high-flying offense from SMU to the SEC. What Razorback fans got instead was 2 years of pure misery. He inherited a bad but physical team from Brett Bielema. Not elite, but with SEC bodies and some winnable games on the schedule. Morris went full rebuild. New system, new schemes, new staff. The result? 0 SEC wins, literally. He went 4-18 overall and 0-14 in conference. The only guys more miserable than Morris were the fans. Arkansas lost to Colorado State, North Texas, Western Kentucky, and got clowned doing it. By the time WKU rolled into Fayetteville in 2019 and beat them by 26, Morris was fired before he even finished year 2. That game, the WKU quarterback was a former Razorback Morris had run off the year before. You can't make that up. It wasn't just that he lost, it was how bad it looked. No identity, no fight, no hope. The program was a punchline. Sam Pittman showed up and went 3-7 in the SEC his first year, and folks were ready to build him a statue. That's how bad Chad Morris was. When Auburn hired Brian Harson in 2021, people were confused. Boise State guy? No SEC ties, no Southern roots. Auburn hired him anyway, then acted shocked when it blew up in their face. He took over for Gus Malzahn, who'd gone 68-35, beat Bama 3 times, and made a national title game. Was Gus perfect? No. But he was winning. Harson stepped in and tried to run things like Boise, and the SEC chewed him up. He went 6-7 in year 1, then followed it with a 3-5 start in year 2 before getting fired. But the record wasn't even the juiciest part. Behind the scenes, it was chaos. Boosters hated him. Players transferred in droves. His recruiting classes were abysmal, bottom half of the SEC. Then came the wildest twist, a school-led investigation into alleged inappropriate behavior, which was baseless but brutal PR. It was open warfare. Harson was a dead man walking from the jump. Auburn hired him without alignment from boosters or the AD. He lost the locker room, lost games, and lost the fan base. By the end, he looked like a guy who wanted out, and Auburn was all too happy to show him the door. When Arizona State hired Herm Edwards in 2018, the internet collectively asked, wait, the ESPN guy? He hadn't coached in college since 1989 and hadn't run a team at any level since the Chiefs fired him in 2008. But ASU's athletic director was his former agent, and that was apparently enough. At first, it looked okay. Herm went 7-6, then 8-5. The defense had some bite. Jaden Daniels was emerging at QB, but behind the scenes, it was a total circus. The real turning point? The COVID-19 recruiting dead period. While other schools followed the rules, Herm and his staff did not. They were allegedly flying players in, hosting visits, handing out perks, all while the NCAA said, don't even talk to recruits in person. There were photos, there were receipts, and the NCAA noticed. What followed was a slow public unraveling. Key assistants either resigned or were fired. Top recruits backed out, and the locker room split apart. By 2022, the wheels were off. ASU started 1-2, including a loss to Eastern Michigan. Then came the moment every fan remembers, Herm being fired on the field after the EMU loss. Athletic staff literally walked him off and told him he was done. You don't get more brutal than that. He left behind NCAA violations, scholarship reductions, a cratered roster, and a fan base in full PTSD. Arizona State's rebuild is just recently starting to gain traction. Tommy Tuberville's exit from Texas Tech is the stuff of legend, and not in a good way. He took over in 2010 after Mike Leach got the boot. Tuberville inherited a 9-win team, a loaded offense, and a rabid fan base. And to be fair, year 1 wasn't terrible, but it quickly turned stale. By year 3, Tuberville looked checked out. He clashed with staff, recruited without energy, and couldn't get over 500 in Big 12 play. But the real kicker? He left a recruit mid-dinner to take the Cincinnati job. No joke. The story goes that Tuberville was hosting a recruit and his family at dinner in Lubbock. Mid-meal, he got up to take a call and just never came back. Hours later, he was announced as Cincinnati's new head coach. That's how he left Texas Tech. Ghosted his own program like a bad Tinder date. To this day, Red Raider fans call it one of the dirtiest exits in college football. His teams were forgettable, but that exit? Unforgettable. Tyrone Willingham has the rare distinction of being a head coach at both Notre Dame and Washington, and fans of both schools couldn't move on fast enough. After a rocky run at ND, Willingham landed at Washington in 2005. The Huskies weren't great, but they weren't hopeless either. There was talent, tradition, and a fan base desperate to matter again. Instead, they got the slowest train wreck imaginable. Willingham never posted a winning season in 4 years. His offenses were flat. The defense gave up big plays like it was a business strategy. But the crown jewel? the 2008 season. 0-12, 0 wins, 12 losses. It was Washington's first winless season in modern history, and still the only one. That year included losses to Stanford, Oregon State, and even a 56-0 beatdown by USC. The team looked lifeless. Recruiting had dried up. And Willingham? He just stared stoically on the sideline, clipboard in hand as the ship went down. It took Steve Sarkisian and a total culture overhaul to dig out of the hole. Willingham didn't just fail. He helped bury one of the Pac-12's proudest programs. Paul Wulff's time at Washington State was so forgettable, it's impressive how much damage he actually did. He took over in 2008 after Bill Doba, but Wulff was supposed to be the guy to modernize Wazoo. Instead, he made them nearly unwatchable. In 4 seasons, he went 9-40. That's not a typo. 9 wins, 40 losses. His first year, 2-11 with a defense that gave up nearly 44 points per game. By year 2, fans had already given up. Attendance plummeted. Recruiting, barely top 100 nationally. Wulff didn't inspire confidence. His teams lacked speed, toughness, and honestly, competence. The Cougars were getting housed weekly and often looked like an FCS squad playing against grown men. By the time Mike Leach arrived in 2012, Wazoo was considered a coaching graveyard. It took a full decade to undo the damage. Paul Wulff didn't just lose games. He erased a football identity. Tim Brewster showed up at Minnesota in 2007, promising to take the Gophers to the Rose Bowl. The problem? He forgot to bring wins. He took over for Glenn Mason, who'd quietly built a respectable program with bowl appearances in 7 of his final 8 seasons. Brewster? Not so much. His first season, 1-11. The rest weren't much either. Over 4 years, Brewster went 15-30 and just 6-21 in Big Ten play. The man talked like Nick Saban and coached like the water boy. He brought in flashy slogans, hyped up recruiting rankings, and tried to sell a vision. But Minnesota fans quickly realized there was no substance, no offensive identity, no quarterback development, no toughness, just vibes. Bad ones. By the time he was fired midway through 2010, the program was dead in the water, despite having a shiny new stadium. Brewster didn't just fail. He wasted one of the biggest program upgrades in school history. Minnesota's still trying to forget the Brewster era. The only thing that went to Pasadena was his ego. That's the list. 10 coaches who either blew a good thing or left the place in flames. If you've got more names that belong on this list, drop them in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep reliving the worst decisions in college football history. Catch you in the next one.